Oh boy. Just when we thought it couldn't get any worse as a Sunderland fan, we then go and produce that shower of turd at Scunthorpe. Okay, right. This is some. I've been wanting to try and talk about Sunderland for a while because obviously, I mean, as on my own channel and on here, it gets quite dejecting talking about the same things over and over and over again. But there comes a point, and I'm usually attempt to be one of the most I'd like to think, level-headed or upbeat people when it comes to following Sunderland. I think a lot of fans do react too quickly sometimes when we, and react on one end of the scale or the other whenever a couple of results, good or bad, go in our favour or against us. But after Scunthorpe and after the last week or so, I can't really be like that anymore because I think a lot of the fans that have criticised the club and have criticised the team, especially after the Scunthorpe game, which I feel sorry for any poor souls who went down there the other day, that's just not good enough. The players, right, first of all, and even then, if you look at like Donald and Methven, right, let's get Donald and Methven out of the way straight away because I've still got my opinions that I think those two genuinely do still have the best interests of the club at heart. And the fact that I'm having to say that disheartens me completely. And it's just something that there's a lot of people starting to turn on them now. And I don't blame them for actively putting questions out towards them. But I've seen people calling them charlatans or cancers to the club. Do me a favour and give over. Seriously, how dare anyone compare a very, very bad disease to Stoke Don and Charlie Methven? Grow a pair and wake up. Those that are specifically saying that need to grow a pair and wake up. As far as when it comes to the criticism, yeah, it's warranted. I think there's a lot of things. They are running the club. I think in general they've ran the club excellently since coming into the club, but I do think that it doesn't mean that nothing what they say can't be called into question. There's definitely a few things that, is what's happening with the academy, is what's happening with the transfer market. There's a few things that, fans are right to ask questions about. But in general, I disagree that they've been here just for the money itself. Obviously, they're going to be here for money to an extent. That's business. That's how it works. You want to make money. But without those two, we would not have had a state where we are investable in the first place. And at the end of the day, FFP wouldn't have invested in us if they didn't like what they were doing. Simple as that. End of story. I do think that a lot of some criticism they get is warranted, but I think a lot of it is a bit. Don't get me wrong. At the top of the level, the buck does stop with them. They do have to take responsibility for people that they appoint, but that does not mean not mean that people below them are absolved of any blame just because Donald Methven appointed them. I'm getting quite sick of that narrative now. People below them, especially players at the minute, have got to start looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, "Oh, what we're doing good enough?" And the answer to that at the minute is no. So that brings me on to management and players. I think it's a safe bet to say that Phil Parkinson has only been in a couple of months. He's only been, not even that. He's only been in a month, really, to be honest. And he hasn't even had a full week with the players yet. So he's going to have that between now and the Gillingham replay. Another game that we could really do without, to be perfectly honest. But then you look at Parkinson's just been in recently, so I can't really blame too much with him. You look at people then saying, "Oh, well, those who wanted to get rid of Jack Ross." Like, no, I'm sorry. Jack Ross, the time for Jack Ross had come to an end at Sunderland because while we were with Jack Ross, I don't think it would have been at best about the same as it is now. Sorry, I'm sorry it went there. At best it would have been about the same as it is now. Maybe, to be honest, it probably would have been worse, to tell you the truth. Jack Ross, I think, it just looked like he'd lost the players. The players shouldn't have been lost, mind. I think the players need to look at themselves here. But Ross looked like he'd lost the players, and he'd certainly lost a majority of the fan base. I do think the squad, and I saw someone on Twitter saying the squad he had was overachieving. No, not really. I think the squad was underachieving, if anything. Although I will admit, mind you, and this brings us nicely onto the squad, basically Phil Parkinson, give him a bit more time. He's only had 4 league games. Let's just see what happens in the games coming up. And in January as well, because this isn't his team, we need to remember that. But however, saying that, when you look at these players, while I've said I think the players are underachieving, I still believe they are, because I think they are at the minute it is a top 6 squad. But there are certain areas of that team that aren't good enough. I think Conor McLaughlin, and I've said it many times, I know that me and Dino obviously had a lovely debate between us on the last Sunday bunch over a week ago. But I'm sorry, McLaughlin isn't good enough. Who gave away the penalty against Leicester on 21? McLaughlin. Who gave away the penalty away at Accrington in the League Cup? McLaughlin. He's caught out nearly every single time that he's up or down the pitch. He can't go forward. His control isn't very good. I don't rate him, and I really want him to prove us wrong, but I don't rate him whatsoever. Then you look at the likes of Grant Ledbetter. As much as I do love the bloke as a person, he's just not good enough anymore. You've got Dylan McGeoch, who I don't know why some people I've seen say he's our best midfielder. I'm sorry, he's not. Power's our best midfielder. Out of the 3 of them, Power's the best by a long shot. Don't rate McGeoch. Charlie White, I don't think is good enough. You know, there's a host of players there, and there are some players like Aidan McGeady, like Chris Maguire, who, to be perfectly honest, given their recent performance, I wouldn't be against selling either of them in January and getting players with pace into the team. I think they're both really underperforming at the minute, and you know, there's a bunch of other ones and even so, you look at the Scunthorpe game and the Leicester games themselves. Like, can these players seriously look at what's going on and deem that acceptable? And I'm sorry, if those players think that's acceptable and they can't be bothered, to have the fight to go and make sure that you do not lose 3-0 to a team that's 21st in League 2. No disrespect to Scunthorpe, fully deserved to win the other night, and hopefully they go on to do well in the competition and stay up in League 2, obviously. And then look and lose to another 21s team at home. Give me a break, Sunderland. Come on. That isn't good enough. And I'm sorry, either those players have really got to get a kick up the backside here, because there needs to be some disciplinarians into that team. We need to get some leaders, which again, considering that Dobson was captain of Walsall and Willis was captain of Coventry, no excuses for there not be leaders in that team. I'm sick to death of people just shirking responsibility. Even when you look at people, I even had someone tweet me recently saying, "Oh, well, McGeady and Maguire have been awful. Look what it would have been like without them." And they put a stat of McGeady and Maguire's assists. Let's get that out of the way straight away. Maguire had 3 of his goals against an absolutely woeful, bang-average Wimbledon team who probably will get relegated this season. He had another game against Accrington, which is one of the few games we're bothered to turn up in. You know, and McGeady scored in that game as well. And the other one was against Leicester in the Cup. Well, I'm not counting the Cups, any of them. I'm talking strictly about League 1 here. You know, McGeady and Maguire do get the occasional assist here and there, but I'm sorry, both of them, and especially McGeady recently, they've shirked responsibility off the ball. They don't press and run into areas they're supposed to be. They don't help their fullbacks. They don't make the movement. They're not being proactive at the minute. And I'm sorry, if they think that they can just stroll around because they did all right last season, they can think again, mind. Because I'm sorry, these players have got to have a damn hard look at themselves in the mirror. Did you, and I want to ask, even any of the Sun players were watching this, my message to them would have been, if you were to look in the mirror after the Scunthorpe or Leicester games, can you honestly, hand on heart, tell me that you did everything you could to get the win? Scunthorpe, clearly the answer is no. McGeady got beaten easily for the cross that led to Scunthorpe's third goal. He was just jogging. He was jogging back. So I'm sorry. I know it's probably an easy thing to say after we've just lost a couple of games, and ultimately, I'm not as bothered that they're in the Cup. I'm not bothered about the AFL trophy, by the way, but it's the manner we've got knocked out that's pissed a lot of people off, and rightly so. You know, and so the final thing we're going to close this video with is these players need to look at themselves in the mirror, and if they're not going to be up for the fight, and they're not going to have the heart, they're not going to have the will, like Mad Mistake keeps on saying at the Sunday Bunch, which annoyed me when he first kept saying it, but you know what, he's probably right now. You know what, I'm sorry. Start playing for the club or fuck off.